My friends, the scriptures tell us that the first time God built anything, he built a garden, but the second time he fashioned a woman, and the word is precise. He built, not merely shaped, not merely molded, but built. This tells us something profound, that the woman is not an accident, nor a leftover thought, but a deliberate architectural masterpiece in the grand design of creation. When God builds a woman, he weaves together both strength and tenderness, resolve and receptivity, beauty and wisdom. She is not simply a companion, but the living sign of communion itself, the image of God's own relational heart. To build a woman is to construct a cathedral of love, a sanctuary where life is nurtured, where faith is deepened, where the mystery of God is mirrored. She becomes both the poetry of creation and its practical wisdom. Think of it. Man was given the task of tilling and guarding the garden, but woman was built to be the very garden of life, the fertile soil from which families, communities, and civilizations spring. When God builds a woman, he builds a witness. She testifies to the fact that creation is not complete in isolation, but only in communion. She is a living homily on love, the kind of love that does not diminish when it is given away, but multiplies. And when a woman stands in the truth of who she is built to be, the world sees reflected in her the very splendor of God, shining forth in courage, fidelity, beauty, and holiness. So, my friends, let us never forget, to honor the woman is to honor the architect who built her. To diminish her is to insult the one who designed her, and to walk with her in reverence is to walk in the light of God's own wisdom. The text tells us something subtle, but enormously significant. It does not say God formed the woman as he formed the beasts of the field. It does not say God simply made her as he made the heavens and the earth. The sacred word is that God built her. That word is architectural. It suggests deliberate design, careful craftsmanship, and purposeful structure. When one builds, one does not act haphazardly. A builder studies the foundation, measures the lines, and brings into harmony strength and beauty. So when the scriptures say that God built a woman, we are meant to understand that she is no accident, no afterthought, no spare part to fill an empty space. She is the intentional masterpiece of the divine architect. Think of the contrast. When God brought forth the man, the text says he shaped him from the dust of the earth, and then breathed into him the breath of life. It is a beautiful image, but it is earthy, immediate, elemental. When God builds the woman, the word shifts. It evokes not the work of a potter, but of an artist, a craftsman, an architect who raises up a sanctuary. And indeed, is not the woman precisely that? A sanctuary of life, a dwelling place where new creation takes root and grows. A temple where love is both given and received. To say that God built her is to say that he ordered her being with intention. Every capacity, every gift, every grace is woven into her like stones carefully laid into the arches of a cathedral. Strength is set alongside tenderness, wisdom alongside compassion, fierce resilience alongside a profound openness to love. She is built with balance. She is built with harmony, she is built with purpose, and notice something more. The man was put into a deep sleep, and from his very side God took apart and fashioned her. The side of the man is opened, and out of that opening God builds communion. This is not arbitrary. It is a signal, a sign, that the woman is not beneath man's feet as a servant, nor above his head as a master, but beside him as a partner in covenant. To build her from his side is to build her into his very life. To build her from his side is to show that creation is not fulfilled in isolation, but only in relationship. She is built into the very fabric of humanity as the living witness that we are made for each other, and in our communion we mirror the God who is communion itself, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, three persons in an eternal exchange of love. So too, when God builds the woman, He inscribes in her very being the truth that life is not complete without love. That is why she carries within her the mysterious power of bearing life. Her very body proclaims that love is fruitful. Her very presence in the story of creation proclaims that God's design is not solitary existence, but shared existence. So when we hear that God built her, we must hear it with reverence. It is not a casual word. It is not a careless phrase. It is the announcement of a divine intention. She is built as one builds a home, one builds a temple, one builds a future. She is not an afterthought. She is the intentional, deliberate, radiant work of the God who builds all things in wisdom. When we speak of a woman as an architectural masterpiece, we are speaking of her place in the very framework of creation itself. She is not simply one among many creatures. She is not an ornament placed at the end of the story. She is part of the very design, the living structure woven into the order of the universe. God is the great architect, and every architect builds with intention. When an architect envisions a cathedral, every arch, every window, every stone has its place. Remove one piece and the entire balance shifts. So too, in the great architecture of creation, the woman is integral. She is not a side note, but a supporting column, a central arch, a vital part of the divine symmetry. Without her, the story of humanity would be incomplete, unbalanced, unfinished. Consider how architecture works. The beauty of a building is not only in its height or strength, but in the way it harmonizes opposites, weight with lightness, foundation with elevation, proportion with grandeur. The same is true in the creation of woman. She embodies a harmony of paradoxes. She can be gentle and yet unbreakable. She can receive and at the same time give beyond measure. She can carry profound silence within her soul and yet speak words that give life. This harmony is no accident. It is the mark of the architect who built her as part of the cosmic design. When we look at her role in the drama of creation, we see that she is not only present but necessary. The man alone is incomplete. The world without her is sterile. It is she who completes the architecture of relationship. It is she who reveals the full symmetry of love. Just as an arch requires two sides leaning into one another to stand, so humanity requires the presence of both man and woman. Together, they form the living cathedral in which God's glory is revealed. But notice, the woman is not simply a mirror of the man. She is not a copy, not a duplication. She is the other side of the arch. She provides the counterweight, the complement, the balance. Her presence creates the tension that makes stability possible. Her difference is not a threat, but the very condition of communion. Without her, the structure would collapse. With her, it rises. Think also of the beauty of architecture. We marvel at stained glass not only because of the colors, but because light streams through them. So too, the woman is designed as a vessel through which divine light shines. Her compassion becomes a window for mercy. Her wisdom becomes a doorway to understanding. Her fidelity becomes a foundation on which others can stand. She is not random. She is not incidental. She is woven into the architecture of creation with meaning, with dignity, with divine purpose. Remove her, and the design of creation loses its symmetry. Diminish her, and the masterpiece loses its radiance. To call her an architectural masterpiece is to acknowledge that in her being we see reflected the mind of the great builder, who wove her into the very order of things, not as an ornament, but as an essential, irreplaceable element in the divine design. When we say that strength and tenderness are united in her, we are pointing to one of the deepest mysteries of her being. She embodies paradoxes. She can be firm as stone, and yet soft as water. She can carry burdens that would crush another, and still offer a gentle word that heals. Her strength is not the harshness of domination, but the resilience of endurance. Her tenderness is not weakness, but the power to console, to embrace, to lift others when they fall. Think of the way a tree stands. Its roots dig deep into the earth, unshakable, immovable, and yet its branches sway with the wind, flexible, responsive. So too is she anchored and yet adaptable, grounded and yet open. Strength and tenderness are not two separate things within her, but one living harmony. She is capable of discipline, of resolve, of unyielding courage, but this same courage is expressed in her ability to forgive, to nurture, to love even when wounded. She is resilient not because she denies pain, but because she can bear it and still keep moving forward. She is receptive not because she is passive, but because she knows how to welcome life, truth, and love, and allow them to grow. The paradox is striking. She can be a warrior in defense of her children and a healer in the very same moment. She can speak with fire when injustice rises and whisper peace when hearts are breaking. This union of firmness and compassion is not accidental. It is designed. God built her this way so that she could reveal His own nature. For is not God Himself both just and merciful, strong and gentle, a consuming fire and a tender shepherd? She mirrors this mystery. In her we see a reflection of divine paradox embodied in human form. Consider how tenderness itself requires strength. Only a strong heart can remain open in a world full of wounds. Only a resilient soul can choose to be gentle when it would be easier to grow hard, and consider how strength itself requires tenderness. True strength is not cruel. True strength does not crush. It protects, it preserves, it gives itself for the sake of others. This is the kind of strength that dwells in her, the strength to sustain life, to hold families together, to carry hope through dark nights. And this is the kind of tenderness that radiates from her, the tenderness that heals brokenness, restores dignity, and whispers to the weary, "You are not alone." Her paradox is not confusion, it is balance. It is the balance of the lion and the lamb, the firmness of the rock and the softness of the stream. It is the balance that allows her to stand tall in trials and yet stoop low to comfort the weak. Strength and tenderness, united in her, are not two competing forces, but one seamless reality. And it is precisely this union that makes her indispensable, for without her strength, the world would falter, and without her tenderness, the world would grow cold. In her unity of paradox, the human story finds both its shield and its embrace. When we call a woman a sanctuary of life, we are saying something sacred, something that reaches to the heart of creation itself. A sanctuary is not just a shelter. It is a holy place, a place set apart, a place where life is safeguarded, nurtured, and made to flourish. From the beginning, God entrusted her with this holy vocation. Her very body testifies to it. Within her, the mystery of new life can take root and grow. She is the first dwelling place of every human being, the first home, the first temple. Before a child sees the light of day, he rests in her, nourished by her blood, protected by her strength, surrounded by her heartbeat. This is no accident. It is divine design. God Himself builds into her the power to carry life, to shelter it, to sustain it. But her sanctuary is not only physical, it is also spiritual. She is often the first teacher of faith, the first to whisper prayers over a child, the first to model love in its most tangible form. Through her tenderness, she shows what trust looks like. Through her sacrifice, she teaches what love demands. Through her presence, she embodies what it means to belong. In this way, she becomes a sanctuary where souls are shaped, where consciences are formed, where the seed of faith can be planted and watered. Think of how a sanctuary operates. It is a place where the weary find rest. It is a place where the wounded find healing. It is a place where the lost find direction. So too, in her presence, the broken find comfort, the lonely find companionship, the restless find peace. Her embrace becomes a refuge, her words become a shelter, her example becomes a guiding light. Even in times of trial, she carries this sanctuary within her. She can walk through suffering and still protect others from despair. She can endure hardship and still create an atmosphere of hope. Her sanctuary is not fragile, but enduring. It is built not on stone walls, but on faith, love, and sacrifice. In every culture, in every age, we see this truth. The woman becomes the heart of the home, the center of community, the keeper of memory, the guardian of values. Her sanctuary extends beyond her family and reaches into society. She nurtures not only her own children, but also the vulnerable, the forgotten, the overlooked. She protects life wherever she finds it, in every form and in every stage. In her, the weak find an advocate. In her, the voiceless find someone who speaks. In her, the fragile find someone who guards them with unwavering strength. To call her a sanctuary of life is to recognize the holy mystery she carries. Life is safe with her. Life is cherished with her. Life is lifted up with her. And when she stands fully in this vocation, she becomes one of the clearest signs that God's design for humanity is not death, but life, not despair, but hope, not abandonment, but love. When we call her the living sign of communion, we are naming the truth that her very being reveals something essential about God's plan for humanity. She shows us that life was never meant to be lived in isolation. She shows us that the human story is not one of solitary achievement, but of shared existence. From the very beginning, when the man stood alone in the garden, God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone." Creation up to that point was called good, even very good. But here, God declares something lacking. The lack was not in the garden, not in the beauty of nature, not even in man's strength. The lack was communion, and so God built the woman. She arrives in the story as the living answer to loneliness, the living witness that humanity is fulfilled only in relationship. Her presence is not just a gift to man. Her presence is the proclamation that love is the foundation of human existence. She embodies the truth that we are made for one another, that life becomes whole only when shared. Look at her vocation in the world. She weaves relationships. She builds bridges between people. She draws together families, neighbors, and communities. Her very heart inclines toward connection, toward belonging, toward communion. Even her words and gestures carry this mission. She knows how to listen, how to draw others out of silence, how to create space where hearts feel safe to open. This is no mere social skill. It is a reflection of divine reality. For God Himself is communion, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, in an eternal exchange of love. When she lives out her identity, she mirrors that divine communion in the world. She becomes a living icon of what God Himself is. That is why isolation wounds her so deeply. Her soul longs to connect, to give, to receive, to be in relationship. That is why division and brokenness grieve her, because they tear at the very fabric she was created to reveal. Her presence reminds humanity that love is not optional, but essential. Without love, we unravel. Without relationship, we diminish. But with communion, we flourish. And notice how this communion extends beyond her family circle. She creates bonds in the workplace, in communities, in friendships. She reminds the world that people are not problems to be solved, but souls to be cherished. She becomes the glue that holds together what might otherwise fragment. She is the living sign that communion is not an abstract idea, but a daily reality. Through her patience, reconciliation is made possible. Through her kindness, divisions are healed. Through her love, walls fall and bridges rise. This is why her role is indispensable. She calls humanity back to its deepest truth, that we are not meant for isolation, but for communion, that we are not meant for rivalry, but for love, that we are not meant for suspicion, but for trust. In her life, in her relationships, in her very presence, She becomes the radiant sign that to live as God intends is to live in communion, to live in love. When we speak of her as a cathedral of love, we enter into imagery that is both poetic and profoundly theological. A cathedral is not just a building. It is a place set apart, a dwelling of beauty, a house of mystery. It is built with soaring arches and luminous windows, so that anyone who steps inside feels lifted beyond the ordinary. It is a sacred dwelling where heaven and earth seem to touch. So too is she, in the very core of her being. Her presence reflects the beauty and sacredness of love in a way that is unmistakable. When you encounter her, you sense that love is not something shallow, but something holy. Love in her is not mere sentiment, not passing emotion, but a deep dwelling place where God's own tenderness is mirrored. Like a cathedral, she is not built quickly. Her heart is the result of God's careful architecture, each gift, each grace, each virtue fitted together like stones laid by a master builder. Her compassion becomes the windows through which divine light streams. Her faithfulness becomes the pillars that hold others steady. Her sacrifice becomes the altar where love is offered for the sake of others. She does not simply speak of love, she embodies it. Her patience in suffering, her generosity in giving, her courage in protecting. All of these become liturgies of love enacted in the ordinary rhythms of life. And notice how a cathedral draws people in. It does not close itself off. It opens its doors wide so that the weary may enter, so that the broken may kneel, so that the searching may find rest. In the same way, she opens her life in hospitality. She becomes a safe place for others, a dwelling where people feel they belong, a sanctuary where love is experienced, not just spoken about. She radiates welcome, she radiates warmth. Her very presence says, "Here you are safe, here you are loved." And just as a cathedral is adorned with beauty, not for vanity, but to reflect the glory of God, so too her beauty is meant to lift hearts upward. It is not superficial, not confined to appearance, but a beauty of spirit, a beauty that comes from love poured out. This beauty makes others believe that life has meaning, that love is worth living for, that God Himself is near. A cathedral stands for centuries, bearing witness to the faith of those who built it. In the same way, her love endures through generations. She passes on memory, wisdom, faith, and tenderness. Her love does not end with her. It becomes a legacy, a foundation for others to build upon. Her children rise because of it. Her community is strengthened because of it. Her world is made more luminous because she bore the weight of love like a holy dwelling place. To call her a cathedral of love, then, is to say that she is not ordinary. She is the sacred architecture of God's intention, a place where love is housed, protected, and magnified. In her, we see that love is not fragile, but strong. In her, we see that love is not fleeting, but eternal. In her, we see the holy dwelling of God reflected in human form. When we speak of her as the garden of humanity, we are touching upon one of the deepest mysteries of creation. A garden is the place where life springs forth, where seeds find soil, where growth becomes possible. It is not barren, it is not empty. It is rich, fertile, full of promise. While man tills the ground and guards the field, she herself is the fertile ground from which families and societies are born. Her very being is ordered toward fruitfulness. In her, life finds both a beginning and a home. Before a child ever learns to walk the earth, that child first rests within her, nourished and sustained in hiddenness. She becomes the soil of humanity, the place where new generations take root. And yet her fertility is not only physical. She is fertile in spirit, in heart, in the realm of love. She nurtures ideas, she cultivates faith, she protects traditions, she tends the fragile shoots of hope in others. Her words plant seeds in the souls of her children. Her example waters them. Her sacrifices give them room to grow strong. Through her, the human story moves forward. Without her, the soil of humanity would be barren. With her, it flourishes. Think of how a garden works. It is a place of variety, where many different plants coexist in harmony. So too, she gathers differences into unity. She weaves together family members, generations, and communities, cultivating harmony where division might otherwise grow. A garden also requires constant care. Weeds must be pulled, tender shoots must be protected, storms must be endured. In the same way, she guards what is entrusted to her. She watches over the fragile beginnings of life, the early steps of her children, the tender growth of faith in those around her. Her vigilance ensures that the garden of humanity does not wither but thrives. Notice also the beauty of a garden. It is not only useful but also radiant. Its colors and fragrances lift the spirit, reminding us of God's generosity and artistry. So too, in her, there is a beauty that goes beyond function. She is not only a bearer of life, but a bearer of joy, of warmth, of light. Her laughter is like the song of birds in the morning. Her wisdom is like the shade of an ancient tree. Her compassion is like cool water in the heat of the day. All who come near her find refreshment in the garden she embodies, and think of how gardens feed the world. They produce fruit, they sustain bodies, they bring nourishment to communities. In the same way, she feeds not only with bread, but with love, with counsel, with presence. She sustains the hungry heart, the weary soul, the restless spirit. Her fruit is not consumed in selfishness, but offered freely to those who need it. In her, society itself finds its foundation. Nations are not built by laws alone, but by the love, the sacrifice, and the nurture that flow from the garden of her heart. From her, families take root, and from families, societies are born. She is the garden of humanity, the fertile soil of life, the place where God's design for love and community takes visible form. When we call her a living homily on love, we are saying that her very life preaches what words alone could never fully capture. A homily is not just instruction. It is proclamation, witness, a message that pierces the heart, and she herself becomes that message. Her vocation is not only to speak of love, but to embody it, to show through her choices, her sacrifices, her tenderness, what divine love looks like in human form. Her life says what the Scriptures declare, that love is not diminished when it is given away, but multiplied. Every act of care, every moment of patience, every offering of forgiveness is a living sermon. She teaches without always speaking. She demonstrates that love is not about possession, but about gift, not about control, but about surrender. In her, we see that love is not sentiment alone, but willing the good of the other, even when it costs her something. She mirrors divine love, the love that pours itself out without measure. Consider how God's love works. The Father gives himself to the Son. The Son offers himself to the Father. And from that exchange flows the Spirit, the bond of love itself. This is a love that is self-emptying, a love that never seeks its own advantage. In her vocation, she becomes a mirror of that same mystery. She gives herself, her time, her energy, her very body, in order that others may live and flourish. She finds her joy not in keeping but in giving. Her sacrifices become hidden sermons, teaching that true love costs something, but that its fruit is always abundant. She can spend sleepless nights for the sake of her child, and yet count it joy because love has grown. She can forgive when wronged, and in doing so, preach that love is stronger than resentment. She can stand beside the suffering, refusing to abandon them, and in doing so, proclaim that love is faithful even in the valley of shadow. This is why she is a living homily. Her life is a proclamation of God's own way of loving, a love that never gives up, never turns cold, never stops seeking the good of the other. Her witness reminds us that love is not sterile, but fruitful. It grows when it is given, it multiplies when it is shared, it becomes a well that never runs dry, because its source is not in her alone, but in the God who built her, and her life is radiant because of this. People look to her and see in flesh and blood what it means to live love as vocation, not as occasional act. She becomes a reminder that every human being is called to love, but she carries a particular grace to show how it is done. Her life is not an abstract lesson, but a concrete testimony. She embodies the truth that the greatest homily is not spoken from a pulpit, but lived in daily sacrifice, in hidden fidelity, in unwavering tenderness. She is a living homily on love, a visible sign that divine love is not distant or unreachable, but present and alive in the world. When we speak of the splendor of God in human form, we are naming a mystery that shines through her life. She is not divine, and yet in her being, God's glory is made visible. She becomes a reflection, a window, a mirror of divine attributes expressed in human ways. Courage, fidelity, wisdom, and beauty are not simply her traits. They are manifestations of God's glory through her. Consider her courage. It is not the loud, boastful courage of conquest. It is the quiet, steady courage of one who endures suffering, who bears trials without surrendering hope, who protects life even when it costs her dearly. Her courage is the courage of the cross, strength not in domination, but in love that refuses to give up. When she stands firm in adversity, when she defends the weak, when she perseveres in faith, she reveals God's own steadfastness. Through her courage, we see the splendor of the one who never abandons his people. Now think of her fidelity. She is faithful in ways that reflect the very heart of God, who keeps covenant and never forgets his promises. Her fidelity shows itself in loyalty to her family, in commitment to her vocation, in perseverance through seasons of joy and seasons of sorrow. She does not love for a moment and then withdraw. She loves for a lifetime. Her constancy is a living echo of divine faithfulness. When the world around her shifts, when others falter, she remains. Her fidelity becomes a testimony that God Himself is faithful, yesterday, today, and forever. Wisdom, too, is woven into her being. This wisdom is not mere information, not a collection of facts, but a deep knowing born of experience, prayer, and discernment. She sees beneath the surface of things. She understands the subtleties of the human heart. She knows when to speak and when to remain silent. Her wisdom guides, counsels, and shapes generations. Through her, we glimpse the wisdom of God, the same wisdom that ordered the universe and brought creation into harmony. Her wisdom is not her own possession, but a participation in the divine mind. It becomes a lamp for others, a steady light in times of confusion. And then there is beauty, not beauty confined to outward appearance, but beauty that radiates from within. It is the beauty of love expressed in patience, the beauty of faith lived in simplicity, the beauty of holiness shining through ordinary acts. Her beauty draws others not to herself, but ultimately to the God whose image she reflects. When people encounter her beauty, they encounter a glimpse of divine radiance. Her courage, fidelity, wisdom, and beauty together form a living tapestry, threads of divine glory woven into human form. Through her, the invisible becomes visible. Through her, the splendor of God touches earth. In her being, we see that God's glory is not distant, not abstract, but manifest in flesh and blood, in choices and sacrifices, in a life lived faithfully in love. She is, in this way, a revelation, not of herself alone, but of the one who built her to shine with his splendor before the world. To say that to honor her is to honor God is to recognize the sacred dignity written into her very being. She is not a random accident, not a secondary figure, not an afterthought in the story of creation. She is the deliberate design of the divine architect, the masterpiece built with intention, wisdom, and love. To look upon her with reverence, then, is not merely to admire her. It is to acknowledge the handiwork of God Himself. Every brushstroke of compassion, every line of strength, every curve of beauty is the mark of the Creator's artistry. When we honor her, we are honoring the artist. When we reverence her, we are reverencing the builder. To dishonor her, by contrast, is to insult the one who formed her. To diminish her dignity is to deny the architect's wisdom. To exploit or degrade her is to treat lightly what God has declared holy. This is why throughout history, whenever women have been dishonored, societies themselves have crumbled. Because when you strike at her, you strike at the very sanctuary of life, the very image of communion, the very cathedral of love that God Himself established. To honor her is not simply courtesy. It is worship rightly ordered, for all reverence given to the masterpiece ultimately returns to the Maker. Think of how one honors a cathedral. We do not worship the stones, but we bow in reverence because of the holiness the stones contain. So too with her, we do not worship her, but we honor the God whose splendor shines through her life. Her courage reflects His strength. Her fidelity reflects His faithfulness. Her wisdom reflects His eternal counsel. Her beauty reflects His glory. When we honor these in her, we are honoring Him. When we give thanks for her, we are giving thanks to Him. This is why the Scriptures remind us to treat her with respect, to cherish her, to protect her dignity, for she is not her own creation. She belongs to God. She is His handiwork, His temple, His sanctuary. To approach her lightly is to tread carelessly on holy ground. But to approach her with reverence is to recognize that God is present in her story, in her sacrifices, in her love. It is no small thing to honor her. It is a spiritual act, a participation in God's own acknowledgement of her worth. For when God built her, He declared that it was not good for man to be alone. In her He provided the completion of humanity, the fullness of communion, the living witness of divine love. To honor her is to honor that wisdom, that intention, that divine plan. It is to honor the God who said, "Let us make humanity in our image, male and female." It is to honor the God who entrusted life itself to her care, who made her a sanctuary of hope, who built her as a reflection of His own heart. So let every gesture of respect, every word of gratitude, every act of reverence toward her rise like incense before the throne of God. For in honoring her, we are not merely lifting her up. We are lifting up the divine architect who built her, and in doing so, we honor the very one who is love. Then, my friends, let us look upon her with the eyes of faith. Let us see in her not only a companion, not only a mother, not only a sister or a daughter, but the living testimony of God's wisdom at work in creation. When God builds a woman, He builds more than a person. He builds a sanctuary, a cathedral, a garden, a homily, a masterpiece of love. To honor her is to honor the one who made her. To walk with her in reverence is to walk more closely with God Himself. And if we allow her witness to speak to us, if we allow her life to reflect God's glory in our sight, then we too will be drawn deeper into the mystery of love, the love that does not fade, the love that does not fail, the love that comes from God and leads us back to Him. This, then, is the invitation, to cherish her, to learn from her, to honor the God who built her, and to live in the splendor of the divine love she reveals.